Hello, everybody, and welcome to Wapiti Wednesday live Q&A for April 23rd. Holy cow! Hard to believe that we're almost into May. So, which
Yeah,
means which means we're almost to trail camera season. Then the fun begins. So, all right, tonight we are covering a topic that was recommended by Mr. Gregory. So if you guys don't like the topic, he is the one to blame because he is the one that chose this. So, but I think it should be a pretty good topic. So, tonight we're going to talk about wallows. So, you guys see the screen okay?
yes.
Okay. Um, wallows. Do you guys know very much about them? Have you really dove into what they are, why they are, or thought about them, adding them into your hunting arsenal?
We hunt around a bunch of them.
Hunt around a bunch of them.
Yes.
Just kind of midday, or you guys kind of use that for a full day approach.
We've done both. We used to hunt over them in tree stands and
Okay.
sit there for the day.
Oh,
Uh,
you have a lot more patience than I do, man.
Not anymore. I haven't been in a tree stand in a long time.
Ah, the
I
only
only
time
hunted.
the only time I can do tree stands is during spring bear when I
Yeah.
was baiting, and I haven't baited bears for a few years, and so my tree stand hasn't came off the shelf out in the garage in a little while.
I only hunt as high as I want to fall.
That is it's a good approach right there. So, all right, so let's dive into wallows. So basically, wallows in essence are depressions in the ground created and used by elk for various purposes. They also have, basically behavior and communication aspects within those wallows, and actually they serve a distinct ecological and behavioral purposes. So, what we're going to do is we're going to kind of break down the different types of wallows, when during the year you may see those, and what the purpose of them are. So we're just going to jump right into the one that everybody knows, rutting wallows. So, oh, hold on. Oh, Larry, your camera's working. Oh, but your microphone's muted.
Oh, for some reason it just doesn't show on my screen.
Oh,
I
yeah,
didn't,
no,
I
we've
didn't,
had you the whole time.
I
So,
didn't know you could see us.
absolutely. So, all right. So, rutting wallows. So, these are created primarily by elk during the rut, which is, August to October. And characteristics, they're typically larger and deeper than other wallows. I mean, I've seen wallows in September that, are 4 to 5 feet in diameter. And I mean, we found one last year that was probably 15, 20 foot wide by probably a good 25, 30 foot long. So, I mean, it was just a massive wallow. That's one of the larger ones that we've seen. But and you can, I mean, wallows, they're pretty easy to find because they usually have a very distinct smell because bulls are using, these wallows. Well, we'll hold that until we get to the function. See, I'm trying to jump ahead, but they'll be smelly because, elk will get in there, they'll pee in them. They will also secrete their scent from their preorbital gland and their forehead glands. So I know we've talked about that preorbital gland in the past, how they use that to put their scent on rubs, but they will also drop the scent into these wallows also because they basically are kind of marking their territory a little bit. So they are located in visible areas, frequently near meadow edges, marshy edges, grassy edges. If you get kind of a flat creek bottom that has, that marshy, meadowy, grassy, that's a good place to really find wallows a lot. But also too, spring seeps, um, Lots of good places like that to find wallows. But the function of the rutting wallows, it's basically it's visual and it's olfactory. The noses signaling to cows and rival bulls. They're marking their territory in there. They're basically dropping who the dominant bull is. And he's advertising to other bulls, I'm the dominant bull. This is my area. Stay away. But he's also using that to attract cows too. So. So these bulls will get in this mud. They will urinate all over in it. They will mix it up. They will paw it, and then they will roll in this mixture. Now, the purpose of this is basically it's packing on that scent, that the pheromones, the testosterone. I mean, just everything during September. This is basically their way of putting on cologne before they go hit the town to round up ladies. So, a lot of times around these wallows too, especially really active wallow, you're going to find a lot of thrashed vegetation from antler activity. So, if you do have a wallow that does have bushes or trees around it, you are also going to have a lot of rubs in that area because that bull again is marking his territory. He's not only dropping his scent in that wallow, but all the rubs around too. He's also that preorbital gland. He's also putting that scent from that on those trees too. That basically is just really, really letting everybody know he is the man. So. Okay, dust wallows. These are also called dry wallows. They're not as common, but what's interesting with dry wallows or dust wallows is they can be used by both bulls and cows throughout the warmer months. It's basically if you get into kind of a moon dust powdery area or dusty soils, they will actually urinate in that dirt and churn it up and turn it into this mud. Now, the reason they do this in warmer weather is it's actually a parasite control. So, between the dust and the mud, with them rolling on this, the dust actually suffocates parasites like ticks. So, springtime when ticks are pretty bad, really good time to find a lot of dry wallows. So, and it's sometimes it's kind of confusing because if you're in an area that there's also cattle, it can be misperceived that it's cattle doing this, but in reality, majority of these that we find on the mountainside are elk. The dust also helps clean and condition their coat. If you think of almost like quail or pheasants that get in the dirt and they dust themselves. So that dust does the same thing on the elk's coat as it does with the feathers on the birds. So now the one thing with the dry wallow, the dust wallow, when they basically urinate and get that mud, it's almost like a mud pack that can also give them relief from biting insects like horse flies, stuff like that during the summer. That's why a lot of times, remember, we've talked about, you know, bull behavior during the summer versus cow calves, where the bulls are up high above the timberline, they're up that high to get away from those biting insects. Well, the cows and calves, they're down at lower elevations. They got to mud themselves and pack themselves to get away from that bite. So, okay. Mud wallows, it's basically just taking the dust wallow, but it takes it a step further. Um, it's found near springs and seeps. It's almost like a rutting wallow, but this one has a completely different function because you're going to find mud wallows in, July, August. And a lot of times the mud wallows during the warmer months will turn into a rutting wallow. But what's interesting is they will use these mud wallows during the hotter parts of the months for thermal regulation, help cool themselves down. If you guys remember, what was it, a couple of months ago when we talked about the temperature ranges of elk? And oh, trivia question. Anybody remember what an elk's normal body temperature is?
103.
Huh?
103.
103. I don't know. I couldn't remember. I was hoping you would.
I was guessing. I think it
I
was.
think he got that one last time.
He
Is
did.
that
He did. He just has 103 written on a sticky note underneath
I
his
do.
monitor because he knows I'm going to ask that question
Right.
sometime. So, but yeah, so it's very important because since they're already at a higher temperature, it's very important that the thermoregulation during the warmer months to keep them, avoiding having strokes and stress. So, all right, now in some areas you can have communal wallows, which is used by multiple elk over generations, and this is where you start getting into the large wallows. Like that wallow that we found last year is definitely a communal wallow because we found different size tracks and different size impressions in the mud on this one. Um, Strategically located near major trails or migration corridors. This thing was actually in a corridor. Well, it was actually on a bench that came up on a corridor, and then as soon as they hit the bench, there was a trail that followed up this chute next to a little creek, and then it got into this flat timber area, and then there was a spring that was coming from the left that actually turned into this wallow in this dark timber, and the trail actually continued to go out the backside and up and over and drop into some dark timber for bedding area. So this was a wallow that they were hitting on their way to bed and then on their way out to feed also. But also too, they were close enough to it that they could pop up this little rise and just come in during the middle of the day. So um, you can see evidence of multiple age classes using this because since it is a communal, since it is a group, you can find different rubs. So, you may find some really good sized monstrous rubs and then kind of some smaller rubs. It's generally what you're going to find in this is bachelor groups before they've really broken up. That's a good time to find communal wallows. So, the function of these communal wallows, it's social bonding and communication, and it actually contains pheromones from multiple animals. So it also serves as an information center for the herd. If they ever do get dispersed, it's a way close by that they can find themselves back together. So, okay. Any questions so far?
Mm.
Nope, moving on. Mineral wallows. So I also call these mineral licks. In fact, when I first really got into elk hunting here in Idaho, the place we were hunting, there was two mineral licks back there. And man, it was such a cool area because there were so many different trails that came from this canyon right to this mineral lick. And man, there was some old wooden tree stands up in the trees. A couple of the trees with tree stands had fallen, but from the elevation of the bench to where the elk had pawed it down over the years was about 6.5 feet that they had just pawed to get down to these minerals that were coming out of this spring, out of this seep. So, and I mean, you could see them pawing. You could see where they were. I mean, we put trail cameras up, and they would paw at it. They would lick at the dirt. They would lick the rocks. They would drink the water. They would lay in the water down on the bottom side where it kind of pooled up a little bit. It was really cool to see the social dynamics of this place, and it used to be one of the places that I absolutely loved putting a trail camera, and it was one of my favorite places to hunt in the evenings because you only had to get to that mineral lick and you just had to go 100 yards out from this mineral lick. And man, I'll tell you what, you would wait until that last hour of light, and you would bugle, and you would have 6 7 bulls just ringing this whole canyon. You'd have a couple deep in the bottom and a couple up on this side and a couple up on that side. And they would all be working their way down here. And, we would be down there on the flat, just, I'd be doing a breeding sequence or telling a story. And man, they thought they were missing out on a party. And it would be like, okay, this dude's coming the fastest. He's going to get here first. Let's move over and set up on him. And, God, I miss that. I miss that place. But the mineral wallows, they're not as they're they're not as common as regular wallows. But if you do find a mineral wallow in your area, mark it. It's a hot, hot place. Now, you can find mineral wallows that have been created, especially if you've got ranchers that run cattle in your area year after year after year. They typically will put their salt blocks back in the same spot every year because the cattle know where those salt blocks are. If they ever stop running cattle in there, well, guess what? Those elk and deer know exactly where those salt blocks were too. Now that salt block location turns into a mineral wallow because the weather, the rain, and everything just drives those minerals from those blocks down into the ground. Depending on how long it's been there, will depend on how deep that those minerals soak down into the soil. So, but if you can find a natural one, and if you have an area that has quite a few hot springs in it, the chances are pretty high that you're going to have a mineral wallow within those areas too. There's a direct correlation between the mineral wallows and hot springs. So, okay. All right, seasonal variations in wallow type. So spring wallows, they're often focused for mud, on the mud for insect protection and parasite emergence. So remember your ticks, that kind of stuff. So summer wallows, emphasis is cooling and continued parasite control, but also to kind of give them a barrier from biting bugs like horseflies. And then, of course, fall rutting, primarily communication and breeding functions. There actually can be some winter, but very, very minimal wallowing activity during the day just because the temps are already lower. Between all of these wallows, the fall rutting wallows are really the ones that we know the most about because that's really the time that the majority of the people are out there. And those are the types of wallows that they typically really know. Now, the one thing is with wallows is that wallow can be established and it will be there year after year after year after year after year. It's generational, like we talked about earlier, those same elk going into that same area, going into that same breeding ground is going to create that same wallow. So now size and depth, I mean they can vary also too. They can vary based on the type of year, whether it's an El Nino or La Nina year, whether it's a wetter year or drier year. Those play into it. Surrounding vegetation damage, maybe there was a fire. Those different things can kind of affect all those. So, all right, that's pretty much it. Thoughts, questions, comments, concerns?
Lots of new info there.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things that Greg, and thank you for suggesting this because once I really started diving into it more, and I'm like, I've never really paid attention to wallows during spring and summer, especially summer when I've been running trail cameras. I mean, I've kind of seen them,
Yeah.
but I'm like, oh well, that's just a wallow. We'll mark it. We'll come back and look at it, this fall. So, one of the things that I didn't throw in there too is the way to tell if it's an active wallow or a non-active. If you get to the wallow and the water is still murky, chocolate milk, the dirt's suspended, that is an active wallow. If you get there and the dirt has settled, that wallow hasn't been used in a little bit. So, also too, when a bull gets in a wallow, he will thrash. He will dig his antlers in it. He will toss mud everywhere. Take a look at the mud on the logs and trees and sticks and everything around the wallow. Again, if your wallow, if the water is crystal clear and all that mud is completely dried, hasn't been used. But if you've got that dirty water, you've got wet mud, and you can smell elk, you might want to hang a camera. You might want to mark that on X and come back and check that thing.
Michael, on those active rut wallows, you're talking about how they're leaving scent in the water and the mud around. If there's a fairly high volume of water going through, is that going to be an issue? And maybe they'll prefer a different one because it might wash the scent out?
Yeah, actually, I mean, most of the time wallows are more of a standing water type scenario. So, if you've got water coming through, say a creek, which kind of sounds like where it's flowing, and you've got something where it looks like elk are coming in quite a few tracks, to me, that's going to tell me that's more of a watering source, but it could also be something that they come in during the middle of the day and lay down in for thermoregulation. So you'll know exactly if it's a true mud wallow, a true rut wallow, because it's going to be muddy and you're going to see body impressions. You're going to see hair. You're going to see where he's laying down in it. I mean, sometimes it's pretty cool. You can see how their legs were folded and it's like, oh man, it's almost like you could cast it the way they just kind of laid down in it.
Yeah, the one I've got in mind I found last year right at the end of season, and it was definitely rutting. It was a spring. They
Yeah,
were right at the spring, and it had to been 20 to 70 gallons going through it. But yeah, the impressions, there was mud flung everywhere. I mean, it was one of those 15-foot wide, 30-foot long wallows.
gotcha.
Um, just beautiful wallow. But I wondered if there was a lot of other wallows nearby, and 300 yards there's probably 4 or 5 other wallows, and I wondered if maybe they would prefer the slightly drier ones for that scent retention.
What you can actually do is just kind of when you're in those, just use your sniffer. Let your sniffer tell you where the scent is stronger in those. That's probably the more concentrated one. So,
Okay.
in what you might have in there too is you might have in that group. Remember we talked about a communal wallow.
Hmm.
So a communal wallow doesn't necessarily mean it's the same one. A communal wallow could mean that you have a patch that's 20 yards by 20 yards, and there's 3 or 4 different wallows in there, and it's almost like Papa Bear, Mama Bear, and Baby Bear. Different size beds, different size porridge. Same thing with these wallows too. We used to have one that we hit quite a bit that we called triple pools. That was actually 3 different pools. And the first year we found it, it was just a triple pool. And by year 3, 4, it actually turned into 5 different pools. So, because they kind of created some more. So the one that you're really smelling, there's a good chance that that's the dominant bull that's hitting that one, and the other one are smaller satellite bulls hitting the other areas.
So, Michael, if you see something like triple pools, how do you typically like to hunt that? I found a wallow of wallows last year that was like your 20 by 30 yard deal. Lots of activity, lots of thrashing. It was half a mile maybe from
Okay.
a pretty well traveled OHV road. So I thought, man, I don't know when they're coming in here. They've got to be hearing the four wheelers and stuff going by, but they're not too bothered. But I have no idea how to hunt something like that.
Usually, when you have multiple wallows on that, that's where during the summer I'll run trail cameras and I will get direction of travel. I will try to get direction of travel in time, so that way I can establish that pattern. Because otherwise, it's just you're basically playing craps. Which trail do they come in on? And then it's like, okay, well, I gotta sit somewhere that I can cover this, but also too, I gotta be close enough that I can make the shot, but I gotta be far enough away that my scent doesn't, catch the trail that they're coming in on, and then they smell me 200 yards out and don't even come in, and that's where trail cameras are just huge. Yeah, I know, Jim. Sorry, you can't.
Sorry, I didn't
I
laugh.
know. So for guys like Jim that can't use him, you got to do the old fashioned where you sit a couple hundred yards away with binoculars and you just watch through the glass. You do it the old fashioned way.
You can follow some of the blue lines on the maps up to where they start, and sometimes you'll find a wallow. And we have seen in new areas on the slope, greener patch of grass or the patch has taller weeds than everything else around it. And you usually go up and we'll find some kind of activity or they've been there, maybe not recent, but sign that they've used it.
Yeah, when I go into a new area, that's one of the things, especially when I have boots on the ground, that's one of the things that I really want to do is go find, wallows. I want to find major travel corridors. I want to find those travel routes. I want to find those wallows. And what I'll do a lot of times is when I'm scouting, doing e-scouting, I will specifically mark springs and seeps. So I may go to a NOAA map or something like that, or just an old-fashioned online topo map. Those topo maps used to be really good about showing spring locations. So I would jump in and mark those springs because that's one of the things that I want to hit those for two reasons. One, those springs are going to let me know water sources, but also two, they're going to let me know potential wallows. So.
Yeah.
I used to spend midday around wallows. I would create a whole scenario where I would take a tampon, I would soak it in cow estrus gel and drag it. I mean, I would tie it onto a stick and stand off to the side and drag that thing down a trail towards the wallow, and I would put a Montana decoy rump up on that thing, and then I would do some light calling. And so basically I did a calling scenario, and then when that bull comes up, all of a sudden he hits that scent drag. Now I hit sense number two. He starts coming in, then he gets to a point and he sees the decoy, and man, I just hit third scent on that. And I mean, we killed quite a few bulls during the midday that way. So, but that was really before I got into midday madness and really doing the calling routines during the middle of the day. So, more times than not, sitting the wallows, we had no activity. So I went through all that effort for nothing. But hey, at least we tried something.
The bears are out. The bears are hitting the wallows right now.
Yeah, bears are out, and I know the red dogs are dropping over in Yellowstone, the buffalo calves. So, because that project I got over there, that herd of buffalo is starting to become larger and a little bit more dangerous with those babies running around. So,
Yeah.
okay, any other questions?
Well, I got a question. We finally got some snow up north.
Yeah,
Like we had 10 inches this last weekend, but it's probably gonna be dry now. But saw the forecast for the monsoon here is supposed to be above normal, and if it rains anywhere, it's gonna be raining up there.
yeah,
Probably a lot of rain because we've been so dry.
yeah.
I've been expecting it, so it could be an interesting hunt with the water situation. Could
Yeah,
change.
because actually, if it's above normal, then those are going to pool in areas that are normally, years past that are drier. So you're going to have more water. So probably those elk are going to be spread out a little bit more.
Yeah,
So kind of like that La Nina, El Nino approach, like we talked about, a drier year versus a wetter year.
right.
Yeah, more water, but also too, you're going to have more feed spread out. So your herds are probably going to be spread out a little bit more.
Yeah. That's like doing the water hole or the wallow look. A lot of times I run across a fence out there in the middle of nowhere. I always walk the fence line because you can't miss where they're jumping across the fence.
Yeah,
All the messed up and hair hanging off the fence. That's a hot spot too.
one of those travel corridors.
Yeah.
So that one's easy to tell there.
Yeah.
So.
And when you post this video, Michael, will that page of notes, will that be there that we can print that out?
Yeah, actually, I will send you guys a link to it when I post the video and when I email out letting you know that it's been uploaded. I will send a link to that Google Doc so you guys can grab it too.
Yeah. No. Yeah, it looks like you put a lot of effort into this one. Thank you for doing
Yeah,
that.
good choice, Greg, because I didn't know there was that much behind wallows.
Yeah, neither did
See,
I.
at least somebody's not afraid to throw a topic out when I say, "What do you guys want to talk about?" This is all about you guys. It's not me just picking the stuff. What do you guys want to know? What do you want to learn?
It's
So,
not like I don't sit and think. I think like, I can't think of nothing. But
well,
then
and that's that's
in the start
that's
of the class, Greg pops up.
that's why I say when I send the email out that this is posted, you can just respond to that email and just say, "Hey, here's an idea for a topic." Except for Larry. Larry can't do that because he never gets my emails. You're muted again, I think.
You're muted. You can't talk, Larry.
You're muted, Larry.
I get the invitations to join the Wednesday night meetings. Why don't I get the other ones?
I don't know, and that's crazy because it's sent from the exact same platform to the
Yeah,
exact same email.
yeah,
I don't know. But
bizarre.
Hmm.
at
Okay.
least you get it to this one. So,
That's a whole nother subject.
yes. So, all right, guys, we'll appreciate you all tuning in tonight. So, as always, keep calling, keep practicing. More importantly, they'll have fun, and we will see you guys in 2 weeks on the next episode of Wapiti Wednesday Live Q&A.
Hey,
Thanks a
thank
lot, Michael.
Thanks.
Good
Thank
job.
you.